Stop the dreams of a 4K Switch right now and get down on the ground. Following the reveal of the Nintendo Switch Lite, we need to realize that the Nintendo Switch Undocked is indeed the system, or at least part of the family of Nintendo Switch systems, or if you prefer the Tegra X1 hardware. Well, the dock is, well, just a dock with no cooling, only a charging cable and an HDMI output. So what should we expect then? In simple terms, more powerful system with at best a 1080p display and 1440p 30 frames per second output. That in itself would be amazing, but is it possible? It could be, but before we go into the rather deep details, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you are new, as it greatly helps the channel and marks for one of the good deeds you will do today. Recently, the Nintendo Switch has received a number of performance-enhancing updates, which we also talked about in a previous video. But now we have a clearer picture of what the Nintendo Switch upgrade could be, thanks to vulnerability researcher, reverse engineer, and data miner Mike Heskin. He pointed out the following in a series of rather technical tweets following the Nintendo Switch Lite reveal. Link to the tweets in the description below. Since firmware 5.00, one of the Switch system modules, PCV, has been crucial in providing insight on future hardware. This is what we know for sure. 3 hardware lines, one for Arista T210 units, original Switch, and 2 for Mariko T210B01 and T214 units, that being the Nintendo Switch Lite and new Nintendo Switch. Original T210 units were called Ikosa for retail, Copper SDEV, and Hogue EDEV. New T214 units are called Iowa for retail, Hogue for EDEV, and Calcio for unknown. Original T210 hardware line had 2 form factors, NX-ABC-A2 for retail and EDEV, and NX-ABCB for SDEV. New T214 hardware line has 3 form factors, NX-ABCA2, NX-ABCB, and NX-ABCC. These 3 forms exist for both Lite and the new Nintendo Switch systems. Original T210 hardware has 4GB for retail, or 6GB for the development versions, LPDDR4 DRAM. New T214 hardware has 4GB or 8GB LPDDR4X DRAM with planned support for 10nm chips. Original T210 hardware used the GM20B GPU. New T214 hardware uses the GM20B internal name GPU. Original T210 hardware used the MAX 77621 PMIC for CPU and GPU, while the new T214 hardware uses the MAX 77812 PMIC for CPU, GPU, and DRAM. So we know for a while that 2 Mariko units have been planned, one being the recently announced Switch Lite and the other being an upgrade to the already existing Switch, which has been further corroborated by a recent FCC filing for the HAC00101. Both Lite and new, real name remains unknown, have the same T214 SoC, which backports security mechanisms from more modern SoCs, and both use LPDDR4X DRAM, which grants a small battery longevity boost due to the lower voltages required. While Switch Lite features a smaller display and non-detachable Joy Cons, the new model appears to be exactly the same as the current Switch. However, the GM20B GPU in the new Switch is clocked at higher values, potentially giving a modest performance boost. Finally, there's absolutely no evidence of an actual Pro version, at least not in the sense that it will be based off of the Tegra X2 Pascal architecture or have massive performance and or memory improvements. Now then, in a more human language, what Mike Heskin first and foremost suggests through his tweets is that there is no conclusive evidence to the existence of a Nintendo Switch Pro with a Tegra X2 Pascal chip upgrade equal to what the Pro was for PS4 and X for Xbox One. Instead, it appears to be more likely that Nintendo Switch is following the revision strategy from the Nintendo DS and Nintendo 3DS. In other words, the Lite is the Nintendo Switch equivalent of the 2DS, a price-conscious and child-friendly system that is cheaper to replace if as a handheld an accident would occur. Well, the new Nintendo Switch hinted at here is that it will be the Switch equivalent to the new 3DS XL. That will say a modest upgrade to the Nintendo Switch, or more specifically a bigger upgrade that will take advantage of the Mariko chip found in the Nintendo Switch Lite. And this strategy for the lineup of Nintendo Switches should come as no surprise, since throughout the history of Nintendo, system revisions have mostly centered around functionality and size. The Game Boy Color to the Game Boy, SP to Advance, DS Lite to DS, Wii Mini to Wii, and new 3DS to the 3DS. They haven't really been about big hardware boosts, but rather existing system improvements. Let's take the 2DS and new 3DS for instance. The 2DS was a 3DS for everyone who needed a decently priced, close to indestructible handheld for kids, or gamers who didn't need the 3D altogether. The new 3DS on the other hand was about performance boosting, allowing for Wii games to be ported to the system. Well, one of them at least, Xenoblade Chronicles, which was cool, cutting down on loading times for other games, and finally giving us a miniature right analog camera stick. Now, the Nintendo Switch Lite has the Nvidia Tegra X1 Mariko chip, which on paper should mean that it can reach the same performance level of the Switch in handheld mode with less effort. But for now, it looks like Nintendo is not taking advantage of it, seeing that the display will always be 720p and at most output games at 60 frames per second. Instead, the main priority for Nintendo with the Lite is to offer substantially more battery life, and then specifically in one case. Since everyone knows that Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild drains the battery on the Nintendo Switch undocked like no other title, and Nintendo probably wanted to do something about this with the Lite. As Digital Foundry mentioned in their recent video, the smaller in size but more efficient Mariko X1 Tegra chip in the Lite requires less voltage to reach the same level of performance. That will say less battery usage in games such as The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is correct, since while you can play the game for 3 hours undocked on the regular Switch, you can play it for 4 hours on the Nintendo Switch Lite, on one full battery charge. That is 1 hour, 34% or over 1/3 longer battery life on the Nintendo Switch Lite compared to the Nintendo Switch when playing Breath of the Wild. And though this, its size and its price are the only advantages it currently has over the base model Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo Switch Lite, the Mariko chip and recent patents, as stated by Mike Heskin and Digital Foundry, point to a revised base model Nintendo Switch system that, unlike the Lite, will take advantage of the second and more powerful T214 Mariko chip. 4K resolutions? Not likely. But Breath of the Wild 2 in 1080p stable 60 frames per second dock may be possible with the T214 Mariko chip. And if not 1080p 60 frames per second, then perhaps 1440p 30 frames per second instead. That might be a little tall order for a new Nintendo Switch, and perhaps Nintendo wants to hold off 4K for the next generation Nintendo system, and rather focus on providing enhancements to what we already have. For Nintendo Switch Lite, this is better battery, power consumption and smaller size. While for the new Nintendo Switch, a slight performance increase with better battery life undocked, or a 1080p display with the same battery life as the undocked Nintendo Switch today. This strategy appears to be plausible and make it possible for Nintendo to keep the Nintendo Switch alive as a handheld and hybrid handheld home console to well into the turn of 2022 and perhaps even 2023, until they finally make the turn to 4K. That way they can first take full advantage of the Nintendo Switch family of systems, Nintendo Switch, Nintendo Switch Lite, and new Nintendo Switch, similarly to how we saw the DS and 3DS family of products live longer than the average handheld would thanks to constant revisions and high first-party and third-party support from launch all the way to its successors were revealed. The same will be the case with the Nintendo Switch family of products. At the same time, none of them will go under 720p undocked, but also not go above 1440p docked. And you know what? With the game engines and art styles Nintendo are working with in franchises such as The Legend of Zelda, Super Mario, Mario Kart, Super Smash Bros, Splatoon, Metroid Prime and so on, we don't need anything above those levels. Then, after experiencing the sequel to Breath of the Wild in 1080p 60 frames per second, and Mario Kart Switch in 1440p 60 frames per second on the new Nintendo Switch, T214 Mariko chip in 2020 and 2021, and Metroid Prime 4 in likely 2022, we will be ready to move on to Nintendo's native next-gen 4K system sometime in 2023. And there you have it. Do you agree with this notion? Or do you still think that Nintendo will go 4K with the Nintendo Switch family before the next generation Nintendo system? Leave your reply in the comment section down below. Now then, thank you for watching. But before you leave, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with the notification bell on so you don't miss any of our future Nintendo Switch, Nintendo Switch Lite, maybe even Nintendo Switch Pro videos. Finally, we need to thank all our patrons, and in particular roller producers Kenyatta Ali and Bradley Carriage. You can join them too and support us by heading over to patreon.com/commonrun. That's all for now, but make sure to check out these two awesome